the talk I'm going to give is just going to be broken up into three-ish parts. First, introducing the concept of the everyday and how it relates to art, then talking briefly about the digital, and then going on to the digital as the everyday in the work of two Irish contemporary artists. So, scrolling web pages, or making a Google search, making tea or coffee, rushing to work, opening up one's emails, checking the posts, making the bed, washing the dishes. The philosophical notion of the everyday brings all these activities into focus. To what end, why, and what significance could they have? So according to Stephen Johnson, editor of The Reader, The Everyday, in the Whitechapel Documents in Contemporary Art series, there's a marked focus, shift and focus on the everyday as a theme in art in the 90s. He does note, however, that it pre-exists in strategies of the 60s and 70s, in Fluxus, Situationism, Conceptualism, and feminist art. However, in terms of theory, we go back maybe another generation and go back to the 50s and the work of Henri Lefebvre and his work on the everyday. So I'm going to run through a few quotes by Lefebvre in order to introduce what he means by the everyday. So the two pieces I'll be going from are a selection that's in the Everyday Reader and then a later piece he did in 1983. So for Lefebvre, for Lefebvre, an important point about the everyday is that it's sort of like a contradictory category. So Lefebvre is a dialectical thinker, meaning that when he tries to view all phenomena in relation to a totality, as well as in relation to all phenomena in relationship to their opposites. So in the Clearing the Ground selection from the everyday, his most used phrase is actually yes and no. That's actually the second slide, I believe. Yeah. Or no, sorry, it is this one. So he will answer the question about trying to define the everyday, saying, would the everyday life be merely the humble and the sordid side of life in general and of social practice? To repeat the answer we have already given, yes and no. Yes, it is the humble and the sordid side, but not only that. Simultaneously, it is also the time and the place where the human either fulfills or fails, since it's a place and time which is fragmented, specialized, and divided activity cannot completely grasp. So he's trying to say that yes, this is most humble, but also most sordid, and we also feel this wholeness in the everyday. In the later 1983 piece, he links this to the idea that there's a lack of a referent in contemporary society. He draws a difference between pre-capitalist societies where, so feudal societies, where you'd have the furniture that you'd be on in everyday life, they would have a symbolism or significance tied to a greater meaning that a wider community believed in. Whereas Lefebvre is arguing that that has gone, so paradoxically the everyday actually takes on a new significance as this sort of anchor, because there's these set of common practices that we engage in, and that they're us making our life world and our world in a very in a very, very intimate way every day, but there's no other greater meaning outside of that, so we anchor ourselves in the everyday, and this will lead to it being a theme investigated by artists. So that's the second quote I have there is just, yet again, the idea that we're surrounded by the everyday. It besieges us on all sides, from all directions. We're inside and outside of it, so that no so-called elevated activity can be reduced to it, nor can it be separated from it. Okay. So I think the everyday, it can be linked to a few other notions, such as those of domesticity, domestic labor, and social reproduction, if you wanted to put it into later constellations of concepts. So that's why I say, introduced that Johnson talked about everyday as a theme in the 90s in art, but it sort of goes in other ways. So you could say that Vermeer's domestic interiors during the Baroque period, and that whole genre has something got to do with the everyday. It's different, but it has something to do, yet again, later 70s strategies such as merely later menu ukases, washing tracks, maintenance outside from 1973, which is the picture over there on your right. that where the artist has cleaned the Wadford Athenaeum Museum, the steps of it in Hartford, Connecticut, so she's transferring acts of daily labour, either done the home or also when work are pushed out of hours and then bringing them out into the open daylight. So I think she's playing with ideas of the everyday there. So brief remarks on the digital before we talk about the digital as everyday, is that I would state that yes, the digital as a concept must be linked to something to do with quantification, and it's something that you can see throughout human societies ever since counting devices are used, whether that's even our fingers for the count. There's this break between things in their concrete reality and then us numbering them and quantifying them, that I would probably subscribe to a theory of the digital like that. But in the way that I'll probably talk about it with these artworks, I guess I'm more using a non-theoretical everyday sense of connected to the dominant technologies and the dominant platforms that we experience in our everyday life. So the two artists that I'm going to talk about, I would say their work wouldn't count as digital art, but because they're not doing it from inside the architecture of the digital. They're not making a program, they're not doing it with a code, but they're working with the digital from the outside. So from the phenomenal level of lived experience. So the first work, which is up on the screen, is Catherine Harty's €600 a month max from 2010. So this work consists of a series of photographs of images of houses on offer from the rent site of daft.ie between some months in 2009 and 2010. So they're reshot on a digital camera off a computer screen on which the images are displayed, so they're not screen grabs. And in the series in total, there are 14. When exhibited, the images take the form of transparencies. They're mounted in light boxes. As a display, they hit up nicely against the notion of the digital, bringing a sense of the ghostly materiality back to the images by restating the backlit illumination that also marks an aspect of the computer screen's intimate pull. So in a work like Catherine Harty's €600 max, something similar to what Lefebvre is on about is happening. And actually, this is connected to a point that I should have mentioned earlier regarding Lefebvre. He tends to think, because he's a Marxist, that there's this tendency towards uniformity, and actually the common practices of everyday life, they become more and more common and more the same across different societies. And I would see the way that the platform sort of flattens and brings all the images together, like it creates this similarity of pattern that you have in the images. You have this grid-like pattern going on, which makes me think that the platform, it's acting as something very similar to how the concept of the everyday acts in Lefebvre's work. So just going to get on to. So just a little word about that, the grid-like pattern. So it's just a few elements rearranged, really, in most. So they're flat pack cabinets and beds, lamps and tables, sinks and kettles. So the grimy grid of the Irish housing market. There's also the fact that the title of the piece, €600 a month max, is the title of the drop-down menu. It's a search term within on daft.ie, sort of speaking to ideas of categorization that are also a major part of the digital. They pre-exist the digital, but making categories is a massive part of that. So the second work that I want to discuss is actually an exhibition and sort of a catalogue of the exhibition of a Slow Puncture by Lily O'Shea from 2021. So in that work, and it's similar maybe to Catherine Harty's work, that they are about lived experience. In Slow Puncture, Lily O'Shea uses her own experience as an artist, trying to make a living, a precarious existence. She uses that as a material for the work. So the exhibition itself was really like an assemblage encompassing sculpture, video, text-based work, and research. The video piece presented a female figure constantly in the midst of beginning to verbalize something by the stance, pose, and gesture she makes, we think it could be an acceptance speech. However, she always stops herself or is stopped by the editing involved in making the work, going to speak, then cut, going to speak, then pull back and stop. What we are left with are a number of pre-verbal breathing sounds, sighs and inhalations, a sense of breathlessness and being out of breath, something which matches to the theme of the research essay which is in that catalogue where Lily O'Shea researches the concept of a burnout society and a burnout culture. So the text pieces was actually across there's three elements of text piece in the exhibition. There's the wall text, there is then a research essay in the catalogue, and then there's also another text piece, sort of visual piece, along with the research essay in the catalogue, which shares words with the wall text. So I only have the image of the corner where it says indeed.com here, but the words around the gallery had words like indefinable, job seeker, Joe Duffy was also on the wall, the name, not a picture of him. Words tied to a condition and mood of precarity within the Irish economy and society. So, like, when I'm about the digital every day, I want to see how it sort of creeps in really maybe minor moments in art. So here, just in the corner, you have Indeed.com. So that's the platform for uploading your CVs. Similar process. You could say to Daft, it's making an equivalence again. So it makes an equivalence between all those going for jobs. It's an easy site for employers to go and compare what's an offer among in the employment market. So this is then spoken to in what I think is quite a potent way in the text piece in the catalogue. So this is sort of how the text piece in the catalogue is laid out. It's this page over here on your right, which I think is very intriguing. It asks, "Am I?" And then it proceeds to list, a number of things: a portfolio, a PDF, a CV, a JPEG, a Google Doc, an email, etc. That this is the existential questioning that goes on in the contemporary environment, in conditions of precarity, and the way in which we think of it is connected in with digital tools is in the comparison with, am I the PDF, am I the JPEG, am I, etc. So I'm going to finish actually just on a point now about platforms. The presence of the platform in both of these works is something that I would sort of push, and what I would be pushing as what counts as digital as everyday, and something that people discussing digital art should engage with. So I'd say I can push to reveal that the everyday as digital is both a practice. So it's a practice of searching and uploading, but it's also a space in which the everyday is spent, because it's a virtual space in which we spend our everyday. The way in which the platforms mediate the experience of the everyday is tied to the push and pull definition of Lefebvre's, where platforms, they're like the most apparent thing that is there. It's the thing that we all do every day, but because of its apparentness, it also recedes into the background. And I like this about these artworks, that there's a certain, when you're working with platforms, or when a platform is mentioned in an artwork, there's this like incongruity of the term or the word, which I think is brought out with how Lily O'Shea has spaced the pages and spaced the words that like daft or indeed, they strike you as like incongruous and just there, but we're using them our whole life. So I like that sense. So that's my presentation. I submitted it just for say, what is the boundary between digital art and art that engages the digital, and I'm looking forward to discussing that more later, and the panel later should be interested in discussing that. Thanks.